Welcome to the group. Welcome to the Facebook Live session. Today is Wednesday, October 9th of 2019. We're going to talk a little bit about using Voc Rehab for advanced degrees. I had seen some questions in the group about it yesterday. And if you do happen to see this and you have a question, I would encourage you to type the question into the comment section so that I can answer your question. Now, let's see here. Okay, so basically the general questions that I tend to get with respect to Voc Rehab is I've been told, or this is kind of the scenario. So usually the situation starts where the veteran goes into the Voc Rehab appointment for the first time. They're very excited because they believe they're going to be talking with a counselor for the purpose of counseling in kind of the traditional sense. So most of us believe that whenever the term counselor is being used, that it means that the person you're going to be talking to is going to be helpful, forthright, and there for you. Usually the veteran goes into the meeting the first time and then immediately are greeted with counselors who are telling them, well, Voc Rehab doesn't approve graduate school or advanced training for anybody. I've been hearing this even still. 2019, I've been talking about Voc Rehab on Facebook for literally a decade. Yay! It's been a decade. We've been talking about it for a decade and about graduate training. And yet, a decade later, we still have counselors that are telling veterans that Voc Rehab does not pay for graduate school, including doctorates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm here to talk a little bit about that. Now, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, my name is Benjamin Krause. I am a veteran rights attorney. I was not always an attorney, though. I, at one point in time, was a very bad carpenter after the military and not great at being a carpenter or carpentry because of my disabilities. I was not very good at it. I didn't really understand what was going on and why I was bad at these things. And so, yay, in stepped my Voc Rehab benefits and my GI Bill benefits at that time. This is, again, many, many years ago, before many of you were probably even thinking about the military and probably in high school or something. But anyway, got out of the service really bad at those jobs and ended up in my first degree program. Went to different schools, started off at a community college, then went to a Catholic school. And at that Catholic school, one of the economics professors told me that his daughter was going to Northwestern University. And I asked him, well, you're a professor here and your daughter could go here for free. How come she's not going here for free? And he turned to me and kind of scoffed and was like, well, Northwestern has the best economics program in the country, is what he said at the time. And so I thought, well, why am I here? And at that point was able to get into Northwestern, and that is where I graduated, studying economics and creative nonfiction. So I did those two things when I was did a lot of writing and economics there. Graduated, had a hard time keeping work, and a big chunk of that, at least in my opinion, was due to a traumatic brain injury that I had dealt with and wasn't receiving care for at the time. Didn't really understand, no one really understands TBI unless they're a neuropsychiatrist or something like that anyway. But at that point in time, didn't really understand what was going on. Was having, difficulties in the workplace, lost my job. Anyway, then was approved after fighting with Voc Rehab and starting an investigation with CBS Evening News and with Katie Couric. Actually, they were doing the investigation and reached out to me in the Facebook group for help. At that point in time, that was Wyatt Andrews, and the year was 2009. And that was when Facebook was kind of a new thing. It was not something that everyone had access to prior to that point. The program was only for students at certain schools, or then it was only for people in school, and then it was opened up to the broader audience at some point. And so social media was kind of new. The idea that social media would help spearhead investigations for journalists was kind of a new thing. And Wyatt Andrews and Katie Couric's program at that point in time reached out and wanted my help. So I helped them investigate. Hey there, Alexia, appreciate it. Wyatt Andrews' team then, started investigating. I, at that point in time, was I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I get the dates. It was a long time. Anyway, it was a decade ago, so I don't have the dates exactly memorized anymore. But I was trying to get into law school. The Voc Rehab program um, I'm trying to remember the sequence. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, at one point in time, I was fighting with Voc Rehab about whether they would pay for law school or not. And thanks in part to the Katie Kirk team and that investigation, I was eventually approved for law school. And the program, funded me to go to school. And so I was out in Portland at that time, and then moved to Minneapolis, and eventually graduated from the University of Minnesota Law School. And that was that. And then afterwards, Voc Rehab also agreed to pay, after again a bit of fighting, agreed to pay for my particular program of starting a law firm that would help veterans fight VA for benefits or for other things. And so after a little bit, they approved that too, or at least they approved part of it. So they gave about 35, I want to say it was about 35,000 in funding for my startup law firm at that time. I was in, I guess, the startup phase, however people would word that. And they help fund some of the equipment that I'm still in fact using today. So that's awesome, yay me. And that's essentially where kind of my backstory is with respect to this group. So I want to talk about graduate training, because again, a lot of veterans are receiving notices that they are hang on a second, that they are getting feedback anyway from counselors that Voc Rehab doesn't pay for law school, or doesn't pay for medical school, or doesn't pay for doctorate of this or that, or doesn't pay for counseling, some kind of advanced degree anyway, where the advanced degree is generally required for that type of profession. So I'm waiting for questions from the group, but I can rattle on about my background. Anyone watching this can actually give me questions about any topic that you want feedback on. Happy to help. But anyway, we're going to go a little bit through the page that Voc Rehab has given us. And so one of my complaints with Voc Rehab, here's the page, is that the program has generally been not, I don't feel like they're very straightforward with respect to how the program works, and with respect to what you can do. And so anyway, this is the Voc Rehab page, the official page, of course, for Voc Rehab. And this is what they say that they do. So reemployment, eligibility. I don't know if you can see, you can't really see my cursor, but if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see it. You'll see reemployment, eligibility, rapid access to employment, how to apply, self-employment, and then long-term services. This is the one we're going to talk about today, because long-term services is ultimately what you're referring to when you're wanting training. So let's see what it says. So we're going to click on it, wait for it to show up. Yay, there it is. Okay, great. So their website works. Fantastic. This is a new website. So if you haven't seen the new Voc Rehab website, this is it, the new one. And what we have here is VR&E employment through long-term services track. This is the information that Voc Rehab provides. And so again, this is their new website. So let's talk about it together. So VR&E employment through long-term services track. If you have service-connected disabilities that makes it hard for you to succeed in your employment path, you may be interested in VR&E employment through long-term services. Great. VR&E training can help you find work in a field that better suits your current abilities and interests. Okay, fantastic. Find out more about eligibility for such and such with VR&E. And then it goes down into this kind of brief explanation you may be eligible for, and it talks about all of these things may be true. So you have an employment barrier or handicap, and you're enrolled in VR&E, and your service-connected disabilities makes it hard for you to prepare for, obtain, and maintain suitable employment, and that is a job that doesn't make your disability worse, is stable, and matches your abilities, aptitudes, and interests. Okay, great. So that seems like a pretty solid explanation. Although when you get into the weeds on some of this stuff, it's not you'll understand what I mean in some of the other videos that I've done. But basically, it's not very specific. So you may look at this and be like, oh, awesome, you go apply, and then they say, well, I've concluded that you can get suitable employment or that you qualified for suitable employment. And you're like, well, what does that mean? And then you start to go through this particular process. And then a lot of people also get hung up on interest. That's a whole other topic. But anyway, when you apply, this is what they're saying. Then when you go down, what kind of benefits might I get? Ooh, I might get these benefits. A complete skills assessment. Wow. Which you can get from anywhere. I mean, you can go online and get this for free from most places. Career guidance. I don't think this is totally accurate, in part because Voc Rehab program does not do a good job with career guidance or many of these other things. In fact, what they frequently do is they will farm this out to you, the veteran. So the veteran, without any kind of experience, will then frequently have the responsibility foisted onto them to do this research and then bring it back to the counselor. Now, the counselor is the one with the advanced training. Usually they have a certificate or a certified rehabilitation counseling, certification, and they have a master's degree in rehabilitation counseling or something similar that allows them to be proficient at all of these things, in fact, that they say that you're supposed to do. Anyway, it's interesting. So frequently the benefits here, what they say the benefit, you're actually the one that ends up having to do this, and then they will kind of tell you when you bring in the information whether your information has the magic sauce frequently, especially when you're requesting graduate program, because that's something they tend to want to fight about quite a lot. So anyway, these are the kind of benefits you get. They say career skills assessment, career guidance, job market evaluation, education and training for a vocational field that's a good fit for you. Okay. Apprenticeship, on the job training, and volunteer services. Employment assistance. Again, I've found their employment assistance with my clients anyway. I do a fair amount of representation with respect to Voc Rehab and helping veterans get access to the benefits when they're denied. And I do a fair amount of free consultations for veterans when they come to me with a denial to my law firm, which again, free, totally free. And I am a lawyer and I'm VA accredited. But yeah, so if any of you are watching this and you have a question about it, go to my law firm. I think it's linked somewhere on the website, and ask for a free consultation. If you have a denial, I'll usually be able to give you good feedback on what to do. So anyway, that's generally it. And then it walks you through the process. How do I get these benefits? Well, you do this, e-benefits. I don't think it's e-benefits anymore. I think it's on the website because they've been moving that around. But anyway, and it goes through this sequence like, oh, fantastic, all these great things. Now, then you show up at the appointment, right? And it's the first appointment. And the veteran frequently makes a request for benefits that makes sense to them. And then after that occurs, hang on a second. So there we go. So yeah, you go in, you ask for the benefits, you sit down and they explain everything. The videos usually they're interesting because they focus on certain nuances of the program that may not highlight exactly the extent to which you can get benefits, right? So that's an important thing to note. So the videos that you get are maybe not as explicit as they could or should be. I've always found that it would be better if they did a more like in-depth example of everybody that goes through the program. So some of you may not know this, but former Senator Jim Webb used Voc Rehab, and he used it to get a law degree. There's a lot of veterans out there, even in the group today, that became attorneys through the program, like I did. And there are lots of doctors in this program, and there are people that have a psychology degree, and they're approved. That was one example. I don't know if he's in this group, but I had heard one example of a guy who was a lawyer. The anxiety related to being a lawyer was too much for him, so he had to get out, and Voc Rehab then approved for him to become I think it was a clinical psychologist or something like that. Anyway, so wow, fantastic. Does that happen a lot? No. But I thought that was a really cool story, and I like to share that frequently with people that are told that Voc Rehab won't pay for these advanced programs, just so that everyone knows that in fact it's false. you can get that type of support if it's deemed, if you're deemed eligible. There's a lot of circumstances that may or may not allow that. So I saw a couple bits of feedback here, and I want to say hi to Janice. Am I pronouncing that right? Ms. Gates. I'm sorry, I'm bad with the names sometimes. So anyway, I see your comment here, and you're saying I was denied college, long-term services, Voc Rehab, because I work in IT and I've been at my job for 16 years. So in that type of a circumstance, it's I can see why they would deny, in part because, and I'm just guessing, you probably didn't have an employment handicap. It's probably what the denial said, at least. Now, there could be circumstances where you might disagree with that, or something along those lines. Now, that doesn't mean that, let's see here, that doesn't mean that you cannot make the request. And so, hang on a second, I'm just trying to make sure. Hey, Annette, appreciate you checking in, and John Young. So, anyway, if you guys have a specific question, like, hey, this and that happened, what do you think? Or whatever. I mean, I'm not providing, legal advice here because this is not a legal consultation, but I'm able to give feedback generally, and this is, an educational thing that I do for people in the group. So, if you need detailed legal consult, then go to my law practice and we'll set up a time where I can give you real specific information. But if you have just a general question about the program or some other issue, definitely write in the comment section, and I can give you feedback about what I've seen and general trends. So definitely do that. Again, this is something I do. I obviously don't charge anyone to be in this group. So, so take the opportunity to pick my brain if you want. I'm a lawyer, so, feel free to do that. Anyway, so I'm looking at this. I don't have much time left on my eligibility. Says one person, and again, I can't see who it is unless you click on the link at the top of the forum, and then it'll show your name. Otherwise, I'm just kind of responding to random people. But yeah, so to go back to this particular question, I can't see who this is, but let's put it right here, and then maybe I can make it a little bit bigger for other people to see if it's a little bit too small. Or up here. There we go. Can you see it? Hopefully you can see it. All right. And then, yeah, there we go. So yeah, this person says I was denied college, long-term service, Voc Rehab, worked in IT field, and been in the job for 16 years. So on the surface, that would appear that you don't have an employment handicap. Now, there could be 1,000 things that could occur between those 2 points, and by points I mean these data points. So you are saying you work in the IT field. Then you're saying I've worked there for a long time. Then you're saying I worked there for 16 years and I'm presently working there. So on the surface, it would appear that you don't have an employment handicap, and this is usually what counselors will say because I've seen this rather frequently. Now that doesn't mean based on those points though that they're correct. So there could be 1,000 other issues going on behind the scenes where IT work could be inappropriate or unsuitable. I could think of, one example might be a person who's, they're working in the IT field, but what does that actually mean? Well, I'm working in the IT field, but what I'm doing is I'm working at a front desk. People freak me out. I can't get out of customer service, let's say, and I'm feeling depressed. My depression's growing worse, and I've tried to apply to other jobs and I can't. I'm only working here because I absolutely have to be, but I think that, I'm going downhill fast. My disabilities or my depression's getting worse. I could think of a few different examples where when you expand the fact set a little bit, where suddenly you can drive a wedge between the appearance of not having an employment handicap and actually having a serious employment handicap, which at that point might allow the person to get in. Anyway, I've like, what would be a good example? Or somebody with like a back condition where maybe they're in the IT field, but what that means is they're setting up IT systems and they can no longer bend over or do other types of things. And the only skill set they have within IT, and because IT is so specialized, fits that model. Anyway, so I don't know who put this question in, but it'd be interesting to kind of chew through different scenarios where the denial might be incorrect. Another person wrote in, I don't have much time left on my eligible. So I'm assuming eligibility, and then in that context, a person with a serious employment handicap could move beyond the 12-year limitation that is generally in place for people with an employment handicap. But there are different scenarios where Voc Rehab can move beyond some of those caps. And I want to say there is one too for somebody with an employment handicap that you may be able to work something out as well. So food for thought. Just because you have this initial impression or were given this initial denial doesn't mean that they're correct. And so it's important for you to dig deeper. Or if you get denied and you're not confident in your skills and abilities to represent yourself, you can always reach out to me for feedback in my law practice. Now that's separate from all of this, but man, I gotta shut off this stupid boing noise that happens whenever somebody writes in. It's really annoying for these videos, and I don't know how to do it. So anyway, let's see, is there a way to shut that off, because it is annoying. Probably not right now. Preferences, let's see here, how do I do it? So audio, echo cancellation, let's do no. Well, I'm gonna have to figure it out because it is really annoying. Sound effects. No. Yes, I think I fixed it. Hey, can somebody comment real quick? I want to see if I hear it. Anybody? Just put in that we're just testing it, because that's so annoying, and it drives me. Yeah, when I'm trying to put audio out and put it on YouTube or something like that, where people don't know what's going on because they see this and they're like, oh well, you got it, okay. No, it's not that simple as right clicking on the browser tab, because this is a program I'm using for that. But I appreciate it. And the good news is it's now muted. Yay! Okay, great. So all these, thank you guys. So you guys can hear me, but you don't hear anyone commenting anymore. This kind of popping noise, that was driving me nuts. Okay, good. So that's gone. Awesome. So I'm going to go back to this other question. Janice. Oh, okay, great. So Ms. Gates. Okay, so. Oh, here we go. Okay, yeah. So somebody comments it was depressing. I was, yeah. Let me tell you, in law school, I felt that way too, because most of the people were like 23 or something, and I was definitely older, and it wasn't much older, but I was still feeling pretty darn old. Let's see here. Let's go to this one. I was denied. I am 100% disabled, but the caseworker felt that I could still manage to get a job. Okay, so a couple things. First of all, most veterans in Voc Rehab, let's see here if I can get this to go to reduce. No, okay, I'm just going to click on this. So most veterans that are in the program have what's called a serious employment handicap, which is either you have an employment handicap or a serious employment handicap when you're applying for benefits, and you're deemed eligible. If you don't have either of those, then you are not entitled to, or won't usually be deemed entitled to benefits. But if you do have one or the other, then you're in. Now, most veterans have a serious employment handicap. I want to say the average veteran applying, though, has a disability rating of, I think, 50 or 40%. And I may be a little bit off, but something like that. So that should give you a bar, generally speaking. Like if you have a 40% or 30% or above, odds are the odds are in your favor that you might be deemed to have a serious employment handicap. In that context, then eligibility for advanced training is certainly much higher, and we can get into that if anyone has a specific question. But basically, this person writes in, 100% disabled, felt that I could manage to get a job. Well, the error there, and I can see it right away, is still manage to get a job. First of all, what is the evidence underlying that assumption. Now, if you're unemployed, then and you're trying to get work, right? Or you're trying to do something to get back into the labor market, usually the person, unless you just say, no, I'm not going to ever try to get work, and that's not why I'm here. I'm here just to, just to go to school only. But if you're there and you're trying to get better, you're thinking, okay, well, education might help, whatever. In that context, usually, if you're unemployed, Voc Rehab has an obligation to deem that you have an employment handicap. And in addition to that, once that occurs, then they have to consider you for other things. And so if you are 100%, but you have an undergrad, the undergrad is in a highly marketable field. And then, oh, by the way, you also, are getting tons of job offers, but you're like, I'm holding out for, the big job offer where I get $250,000, yeah, you're probably going to get denied. But anyone else, where you're like, well, the only job I can get is Walmart as a greeter or working at, Sam's Club stocking shelves or something like that. In that context, you're maybe going to be okay for benefits. So in this if whoever this veteran is about being denied, I would encourage you to push back. Again, any veteran that comes to my law firm who has a denial, and it's a denial where I read it and I'm like, oh yeah, I can give you good feedback, we'll do a legal consult for free. Like it's free. And I don't, it's funny to me because people think that, once you become an attorney that somehow you're a bloodthirsty, trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip kind of a person. But most lawyers that I know of in this sector, within veteran benefits anyway, do offer a free consult. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to talk to the lead attorney of that law firm, but you usually will get a free consult, normally speaking. And in my firm, if a veteran puts that in and they're in Voc Rehab and they have a denial, they'll usually get to talk to me, and we'll run through what happened with their particular denial. So I do see sometimes other people online are like, I offer free help, but then you look at their background and you're like, you have a master's degree in what? You're what? I don't understand. Or you have a degree in such and such, or no degree at all. And that's great. I mean, I'm all about people helping other folks out, but I'm an attorney who does this, and I help people in Voc Rehab. And if you want a free consult, and you're denied, I'll usually give you one. So anyway, I don't know why that is. It's still kind of, you can see my face turn red. I'm like, I don't get it, but fine. Anyway, a lot of folks don't realize that I do free consults. I don't know why, because it's on my website, and I tell everybody that. So I'm just kind of like, okay. If you don't want free help, fine. So yeah. Anyway, and then somebody says, depressing. What else? Do you believe there is much success in appealing claims? Absolutely, and it appears to be an unwinnable. Okay, no, I represent veterans. So when somebody wants me, they hire me for representation. I have a fair amount of success even at the RO level without going to the board. We have a bunch of pending appeals at the board right now too. But I usually try to get my stuff fixed at the regional office. I mean, that's the goal. And I've had, I can't get into specifics here at the moment, but I can tell you that absolutely I have won Juris Doctorates for veterans, medical doctorates, other forms of doctorates, master's degrees. That's, people come to me when they run into bureaucratic red tape. Then they hire an attorney to come kick butt. Okay, so if you want to hire an attorney to come kick butt and to represent you, okay. But I would also, you can get also free help, like free representation rather, which is different, from like a VSO, County Veteran Service Officer, or National Service Officers from the major VSOs. Now, they will represent you. What they generally don't do is they generally don't do claim development. That's the difference between what an attorney does and what the free help does. So what I mean by claim development is when you file a claim with most CVSOs or most VSOs, you will come in, they'll sign the paperwork. If it's an appeal, they'll walk you through that. But they usually won't provide legal advice about it, and they really probably shouldn't because they don't have the extensive training. But there are some, not to besmirch VSOs fully, because there's a lot of good ones out there that do know their stuff. There are a lot of VSOs that don't, right? Because they're not trained. In fact, to be a VSO, I think the only requirement is a high school degree and passing a 25-question test. So a lot of VSOs don't have a college degree, much less an advanced degree or Juris Doctorate, and that extensive training, much less the bar license, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of differences. So it's basically like you're comparing cars. You may get a Yugo, or you may get a Chevy or a Jaguar. It depends on what you want, and not all cars are the same, and not all cars are the same speed or the same whatevers, or go four-wheel drive. I mean, not all cars are the same. So not all VSOs are the same. Not all VA representatives are the same. It just it depends. So anyway, I hope that helps. So yes, people win at the regional office. It is, and I do see this in some other groups where they discourage appealing, and it's like, I don't know why. I mean, if you don't agree, push back, right? If you don't agree, push back. Okay, you can do it yourself. If you are proficient and you really understand the legal nuances of the appeals process, which, I mean, today is probably more confusing than it used to be with the new appeals modernization, where now you have all these options, but each one has its own kind of legal ramifications and options. And if you don't understand the strategy, you can get yourself in a little bit of, you can miss out on benefits. But anyway, let's see here. What else? So I have another question. When do they clarify if you have an SEH? They don't. Okay? They don't. You have to go find out. You have to go get the records. They rarely ever tell you that they made that determination. And part of the reason is they don't want you to know what's going on. There's some science on this within the social sciences that I have been researching and read about regarding filtering and signaling and other stuff that I won't get into here. But basically, they don't want veterans to know every nuance to this program, because they believe that veterans will falsely signal to them information that may be exaggerated or maybe something other than whatever they're looking for. And so they want you to show up without any clue about what you're asking for. So they actually want you to be ignorant and just show up as you are. And of course, I disagree with that, because veterans, first of all, the system that we're in is supposed to be pro-veteran, pro-claimant. And, there's the tie goes to the runner, equipoise, all that stuff, where if there's the totality of facts weigh one way or the other, then the tie goes to the veteran. There's just nuance that that's out there that VA is supposed to consider. Voc Rehab, in my opinion, is like 10 years behind the curve related to due process rights and related to veteran processing. And so they frequently do not. GI Bill, don't run your GI Bill out before you apply and request. Yeah, and so I see this frequently, or variables of this. So basically, this individual is writing in, they agreed to finish my bachelor's degree and not law school. Specifically, this quote, this office doesn't approve. Well, okay, you went for a hybrid. I mean, bad move. Don't do that, because you'll spook them. It's just like hunting. You don't go in there and be like, oh, I want this, the hybrid JD, PhD, MD, and I'm going to be in school for 10 years. Don't do that. That tends to be just not great. So the hybrid stuff, don't do that. Go in, I want a JD, right? Because that's a very specific thing. If you want to pick up a PhD later, there are different ways to do it. You don't need to go for the full kahuna, like right out of the gate. There are ways to get that sorted out through scholarships, or sometimes Voc Rehab might even approve it depending on the circumstance. Or there are some arguments I could think of that may allow for this, but Jersey, I am certain, probably does approve this stuff. You just got fed a line of bull. How can I? And in fact, I mean, it's a federal program. It shouldn't be just, well, Jersey won't do it. It's a federal program. Uncle Sam, when you served in the military, odds are you served in the federal military, right? So somehow not just New Jersey. So that doesn't make sense. How can I better advocate for myself in presentation of my case? Well, it depends. I mean, whoever's writing this, first of all, do you want representation or not? If you want to go pro se, go for it. There's lots of information online where you can piece together your skill set, your presentation. I have free and low cost resources in our Veteran Resource Center. So that's at if you type in the URL my.disabledveterans.org, it'll bring you to the online Veteran Resource Center that I created this year. And I've created it before, but I moved it to a different location on my own domain. So anyway, go check it out. There's lots of resources. Disabledveterans.org. You can go there, and there's just lots of stuff. There's the Voc Rehab Survival Guide. That's something I wrote that'll help through that process. Or you hire an attorney after you've been denied, or you go to a VSO and cross your fingers. There's a lot of different things you can do. But if you've been denied, like I keep saying to people at my law firm, BenjaminKrausLaw.com, you can ask for free consult. That's fine. If you have a denial and I can look at it and, it's something I can help with, we can chat about it and it's free. So, anyway, so I hope that helps. And then what else do we got here? So, let's see, we got that. Then we have, what do you do if you're already in the program and you want to keep going? Or if you got your BA via GI Bill, but you want to continue master's. Okay, so I would generally encourage people, if you're in your BA and you know that you're going to require a master's for whatever type of training you are, or you're in a situation where you have a serious employment handicap and are at a competitive disadvantage against non-disabled people for the same type of job, you may be then eligible for advanced training. And with Voc Rehab, there's a lot of different options, but they push against this a lot, and in some locations very hard. It just depends on the regional office. So you can get a change. There's lots of different stuff you can do. So anyway, what do you do if blah, 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 blah. Okay, so yeah, this one, there's 1,000 things you can do. I have addressed this on other videos in the group. Again, there's the Voc Rehab Survival Guide. There's a lot of different resources. If you do want to do a denial, again, you can put in a request. But usually, if you're in a BA and you know that you're going to need to move on, then I would really encourage you to make the filing before you finish the BA, if it's a thing where you're going to need the master's, or there's there's a lot of variables. So, but you're going to run into issues with the agency frequently. Let's see here. She made it seem like so this is somebody else. Because I have a BA and an MA that I got in 2004, that I am okay. I have some physical limitations that prevent me from working in the civilian force. I wanted to focus on a different degree that could, okay. So without knowing more, again, it's difficult for me to give you feedback other than saying, without seeing the actual denial. I hope you went in to get your denial letter, or they mailed it to you. I have seen a lot of instances where the agency does not send the denial letter, and they just try to get you to go away, and then they close it out later or something like that. So just make sure you get the denial. I have some physical limitations that prevented me from working on the civilian. So in that context, it depends on what the denial is. There are some counselors that would approve it because the degree type was so far in the past. If you're unemployed but you're active and trying to gain employment or something like that, then there are different ways you can make that thread that needle or make that argument. Let's see here. What else? What do I do? Okay, this is funny. I love it. What do I do if I want to purchase a bar that's already running? Would Voc Rehab give me the ability to start this endeavor? Absolutely not. So don't even ask this question. There's no way that they would fund this. They don't fund buildings. They don't fund vehicles within self-employment. In fact, self-employment itself is difficult to get approved anyway, with minimal support and sponsorship. And by minimal, I mean under 25,000. So this type of option may not be an option. Okay. just to point that out. And then let's see what else. There was one guy, I'd seen this appeal where he wanted to build a resort and appealed this to the board, where he wanted, I want to say it was 20 million or it might be more, wanted VA to buy the resort for him and develop the land and stuff. And it was just not, that's not going to happen. Anyway, I don't mean to make somebody feel bad, but that's just not reasonable. Okay, so what is the best way to get a PhD approved? I just finished a master's degree in cybersecurity, and my counselor says that she can find a job with master's. How do I convince her? Well, you may not be able to, because you didn't get this approved straight away. And if it's in IT, or let's see, cybersecurity, you may have to fund that yourself, because if you're qualified for suitable employment and the degree type is recent, and there are in fact jobs out there you could get that would fit within the suitable employment criteria, the odds of getting the PhD approved just because is slim. Now, with the catch-all, if you have an SEH, serious employment handicap, and you are at a competitive disadvantage as a consequence of your disabilities, and would be that competitive disadvantage would be ameliorated or reduced with additional training in the same area, it could be possible to get the PhD. So I could think of a few examples where I've been able to get veterans approved for. There was one example where they were approved for a joint degree and a joint advanced degree. One was a doctorate and then a master's degree to buttress that. And in that context, the doctorate was the finite degree, right? That's the thing you needed to gain minimal entry. But then the argument for the master's degree is that the JD is minimal entry, just like everyone else. If I have disabilities that are of a sufficient magnitude where I'm at a competitive disadvantage against non-disabled folks, then a master's degree in that context or the advanced degree might make sense. So I could think of a few different ways to argue that. That doesn't mean you'll be successful with the counselor. It might mean you need to appeal and fight back. But there are ways to thread that needle depending on the individual facts, circumstances, and the finding of the counselor. So anyway, so there's that. And then who else? Let's see. So Muhammad, hey, good to see you, buddy. He writes in, thank goodness I'm HLR right now for a printer. Oh, geez, that's weird that they're fighting you on that. My counselor basically balked every time that I need a printer. Yeah, well, I hope that you requested if you need the printer and you put in the request, I hope you put in the request for the alternate duty station to do the review. That way it's taken out of the hands of the local folks. That can help out. So I would encourage you to, if you do an HLR, to do it that way so that the local office is removed. And then you don't have that weird baked in bias that a lot of veterans run into. Let's see. Another veteran writes in, what do you recommend if the RO has not responded? So they don't do admin reviews anymore unless you filed the admin review. Like, I don't know. I mean, it depends. If you filed this, then they don't do admin reviews anymore, so I can only assume that this is an old admin review. If it's been outside of, you only have 1 year, according to the VA, to appeal the original decision letter. And then if you requested the admin review and you're still waiting and it's been 10 months or something, I mean, definitely make sure they initiate the NOD appellate process on the legacy appeal, if that's the case. And that's what you're worried about. On the other hand, if it's a newer denial, they don't do admin reviews anymore. They only do HLRs, so higher level review, supplemental claim, which is basically new evidence of the same counselor that denied you in the first place, which I don't think is terribly effective, but it can be. And then a standard appeal. And then standard appeal to the board has other things. So then there are 3 options there at the board. So there's like 5.5 new options when it comes to appeals. let's see here. And so if you haven't received a response back yet, you got to hit them with more requests, but make sure that they initiate the appellate process. So in other words, if they're doing the admin review only and you're like, look, you guys are taking forever, you got to get make sure they know that it's an NOD, notice of disagreement, prior to 1 year. And then let's see. Anyway, so that's what I would do. And then let's see here. And again, each case is very different. So if you're only want help from a VSO, go talk to a VSO, get feedback in your local regional office. I help veterans with denials or give feedback on denials for free consults. And I do representation for people that are denied if they want to hire an attorney to come in and swing for them. So that's a whole other animal. Now, somebody writes in, I was told I only qualify for independent living, but have received. Okay. So I've not talked about independent living. It's a different topic, but if you don't agree with the conclusion, et cetera, you might want to push back. Again, a lot of options. There are so many ways I hate to say skin a cat, but there are so many ways to skin a cat on these claims, and there are different ways to get most things done, as long as it's reasonable and within the scope of like what the plain language of the policies and or other things allow. So some might allow different things that others don't. So anyway, let's see. Muhammad asks, hang on a second, can I file a FOIA? Yeah, you can, but I mean, it's not going to benefit you. I mean, at the end of the day, going after the counselor directly is rarely beneficial. Now, there might be instances where it could be, but you got to remember, man, the VA is a good old boys and girls club like any other, massive bureaucracy, and going after one of their kin, not a great idea. It's like the South, except all over the VA. So don't go after kin unless it really makes sense. Otherwise, and there are instances where I would do that, but normally I just let it go. I mean, just do your HLR, try to get that printer, and then move on. But don't spend your whole life chasing around this type of stuff. It's just not unless like me, I do it for a living. Unless you're earning a living doing it, otherwise just don't waste your time. Let's see. How to stop a work slow. I don't get this. So oh boy. I don't know what you mean. Worked slow. Passively worked slow. Maybe this is Ombudsman Client Assistance Program. This must be a pilot. So the CAP, Client Assistance Program, Ombudsman suggested changing counselors. Is this with Voc Rehab in healthcare or Voc Rehab within benefits? Anyway, I don't have an answer here, but it's an interesting issue. I mean, changing counselors can be beneficial, but you got to be careful when you put in the request because you can end up being stigmatized. So there's some other considerations that you want to. Oh, I get it. Work slow, meaning the field is stagnant. Oh, what kind of work are you talking about? I don't. Oh, okay, I get it. Sorry, there was somebody asking me about the bar question. Thanks, Mike. I have a couple computers here that I'm working off of, so I can see what people are asking me that's not on live stream. Yeah, I don't have an answer about the cap. That's not a top. I'm interested. I just don't. I don't think I have enough information to give feedback on it. Okay, I got it. So, so your counselor is slow. Okay, I get it. Counselor is not moving fast enough. So they're within the M28R. So I have a copy of it on the in the online VRC or Veteran Resource Center for free that you can download. That I paginated, making it easier to search for keywords, basically. But you can take a look. The so if they're working slow, you got to double check and see what the time frame is supposed to be, and then you start. What I tell veterans to do anyway is to pepper the file. So you send them emails, maybe once a week, every couple of weeks, unless it's urgent, and then it's every few days. And then you could also do memoranda. So those are some of the options, but that's what I've done. And requesting a new counselor is tough. I was able to get it worked out, but it was it was a lot of work, and it's not something that I would whimsically do. So if you are very confident that your request for a new counselor will be addressed appropriately and that you won't get blackballed in the office by the new counselor because you did that, then sure. But it's not something I would do lightly. Anyway, so on that note, I need to go. I didn't realize I've been on here for 50 minutes. Holy buckets. Anyway, love you guys. Thanks for checking in. It always takes a little bit to get these things moving with participants. I know like the first 15 minutes tend to be pretty slow, but take a look at this. I'm going to leave it on the website for a little bit. And let's see, let me get off of this so you don't, there we go. But backing up a little bit, if you're new to Voc Rehab and you want an advanced degree, they will cover it in certain instances, just like anything else. And but it's got to be reasonable. Going in for like a joint degree type is not going to be easy. So especially if you're going for a JD or something like that. So, buyer beware if you do that. Now, okay, so currently finishing. If you're thinking about going for additional treatment or additional training, rather, you better put in that request right now before you graduate. Put it in right now. Unless you don't, again, go talk to somebody who's very familiar with your situation in your area. It's been my suggestion to most veterans. If you're in your undergrad and you're not done yet, and you're in Voc Rehab already, and you know that you will want additional training to become a professional like a dentist or a medical doctor, physician, lawyer, psychologist, very specific things where you need the advanced degree. I always encourage those veterans to evaluate whether it makes sense to apply prior to concluding the undergrad. The reason being that frequently, not always, but frequently, VR counselors, when they do deny, they'll hang their hat on the fact that you have an undergrad, and then they'll say, well, with the undergrad, you can go get training in that field, so you're qualified for suitable employment, therefore you're not entitled. That's generally been what's occurred. So anyway, having said all that, go get legal advice. Go to your VSO. Go to your attorney in your area. Find an attorney who's VA accredited. I mean, I've already, who I am, and I have a law firm too. So lots of folks out there to give advice. When you get advice online, make sure you know who the person is and their credentials, and their training and their experience. These are things that usually you can figure out as long as you know the identity of the person. Getting advice from somebody in a forum like Billy Bob 149er may not be the best source for legal advice because you don't know who they are and you don't know their training. So forums can be useful for educational purposes. Getting legal advice from a forum, I would not do, and I discourage that practice. So if it's a legal issue and you're like, well, here's my fact set, I don't know what the outcome should be, better talk to an attorney or somebody who's competent and able to provide assistance. And again, there are VSOs who can help. There are CVSOs. It's been my experience that most of them are too busy to provide claim development, whereas an attorney will. But of course, with most attorneys, you will have to pay for that service, just like anything else. But if it's very simple and you're able to, fill out some paperwork simply and turn it in, and that is sufficient for your purpose, VSO is great, and they don't charge to fill out a document. But let's see here. Okay, so somebody wrote in one last question I'll answer and then I gotta go. But I showed my interdisciplinary bachelor's wasn't helping me qualify for jobs. I showed what I needed planned in order to, okay. And I was approved. Oh, there you go. See? Good advice from somebody in the group. Proof for the MSW. And again, I think where a lot of veterans get in the weeds is, oh, well, that means, I mean, what you're describing here in this comment is evidence and claim development. And that's where a lot of veterans tend to get hung up, is, well, how do you present this? How do you know? I have seen instances where veterans come to the table with evidence that was developed wrong. And that's always a concern because unless you're trained in the field and you work in the topic, that area, it's easy to make a mistake. And it's important to understand what the evidence actually shows. Very frequently when veterans are pro se, we as a population tend to get over emotional, right? Because it's your stuff. You tend to get emotional. And when you are emotional on your own claim, it clouds your ability to see the information objectively. And this is usually true for most Americans, most people. So that's why it's important to get an objective third party to look it over. Again, a VSO, CVSO, they can help with that. If they have time, they usually don't, but if they do have time, you might be able to get additional help. Aside from that, okay, I can't see the names here. Okay. Oh, okay. Hi, Keisha. Thanks. I appreciate it. I didn't see your name on here. So on the system, it doesn't show up. Anyway, I appreciate it. I'm really glad that you guys checked in. And until next time, again, hopefully get more of this going. I've been sending out and communicating with new members to the Facebook group with the goal of trying to develop the community out and make everyone more aware of the resources that are here. Okay, Muhammad asks, what is the opt-in? So if you get an SOC in the old system and you fill out the form for higher level review, there's a checkbox on the second page that allows you to opt in. It's that simple. So anyway, all right, folks, take care and have a great remainder of the week, okay? Try to stay warm if you're up in the northern region like we are. Take care.